Hello guys, welcome to Fictional Vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto was the champion of Hestia, the fire sage who burned time. Naruto x Hestia, DanMachi / Percy Jackson. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Heart's Flame Pain. That was the first thing Naruto registered. Not the dull ache of chakra exhaustion he was used to, but sharp, electric agony that seemed to pulse through every cell in his body. His eyes snapped open to a sky he didn't recognize, too purple, too close, with stars that formed unfamiliar patterns. What the hell, he groaned, pushing himself up on his elbows. The last thing he remembered was fighting that Otsutsuki guy, the one who'd torn a hole in reality itself. There had been a blinding flash, the sensation of falling, and then, this. Wherever this was. Naruto took stock of his surroundings. He sat in the middle of a small crater in what looked like an alleyway between stone buildings. The architecture wasn't like anything in Konoha or any other hidden village he'd visited. Medieval-looking structures loomed overhead, illuminated by what looked like gas lamps rather than electric lights. Kurama, he called internally, seeking the familiar presence of the Ninetales. A grumble answered him. "I'm here, brat." "Barely. Something's different about this place. The chakra feels wrong." Naruto nodded, feeling it too. The natural energy here flowed differently, thicker, more chaotic, less disciplined than what he was used to manipulating. He attempted to gather sage chakra and immediately regretted it as the unfamiliar energy rushed into him like wildfire, burning through his pathways. Gah! He doubled over, clutching his stomach. "Careful," Kurama warned. "This isn't our world. The rules are different here." Getting to his feet, Naruto dusted himself off. His clothes were torn and singed from his previous battle, but he still had his gear. He checked his pouches, kunai, shuriken, some smoke bombs, and a few food pills. Not much to work with, but better than nothing. The sounds of a busy street drifted from one end of the alley. People talking, laughing, haggling. Normal sounds that somehow felt alien in their ordinariness. Naruto moved toward them, his ninja instincts automatically keeping him in the shadows. The street that opened before him looked like something out of a fantasy book. People bustled about in clothes that reminded him of civilian wear in the land of iron, but with stranger cuts and colors. Some individuals stood out dramatically, a woman with pointed ears, a burly man with tusks protruding from his lower jaw, someone with actual animal features. "What the hell kind of Kekkei Genkai is that?" Naruto muttered. "I don't think those are bloodline limits," Kurama replied. "I think they're different species." Before Naruto could process this, his stomach growled loudly. He hadn't eaten since before the battle, and dimensional travel apparently worked up an appetite. He patted his pockets, finding a few Ryo coins, but doubted they'd be accepted here. Great. Stranded in a weird dimension and I'm broke and hungry. As he stood contemplating his next move, a commotion erupted further down the street. A small figure darted through the crowd, pursued by larger shapes. Without thinking, Naruto moved toward the disturbance, leaping to a rooftop for a better view. Below, a young boy with white hair clutched a bag to his chest, running from three rough-looking men. The kid couldn't have been older than 14, slim and obviously outmatched. "Get back here, you little thief," one of the pursuers shouted. The kid glanced back, fear in his ruby-red eyes, and didn't see the cart pulling out in front of him. He slammed into it, tumbling to the ground as vegetables scattered everywhere. The men closed in, wicked grins on their faces. "Now we've got you," a blur of orange and black dropped. Between them and the boy. 3 grown men chasing one kid. "Not cool," Naruto said, crossing his arms. The men sized him up, taking in his strange clothes and confident stance. The biggest one stepped forward. "Mind your business, foreigner. The brat stole from us. Naruto glanced at the kid, who shook his head frantically. I didn't. I was just passing by their shop and they accused me. He's lying. Check his bag. Naruto maintained his position between them. How about this, we all calm down, check the bag, and if there's nothing there, you guys apologize and move on. The leader sneered and reached for what looked like a short sword at his hip. How about you move or get cut down? Naruto sighed. Some things really were universal, like bullies who resorted to violence when challenged. Without warning, the man lunged forward, blade slashing toward Naruto's chest. To the crowd, it must have looked like Naruto simply vanished. One moment he stood there, the next he was behind all three men, holding the leader's weapon. That's a pretty nice blade, Naruto said casually, examining it. Terrible owner, though. The three men spun around, faces contorted with shock. What, how did you? Naruto tossed the sword from hand to hand. Last chance to walk away. Instead, all three attacked at once. Naruto didn't even need shadow clones for this. He sidestepped the first attacker, tripped him into the second, and used the flat of the confiscated blade to tap the third lightly on the head as he stumbled past. You guys really suck at this, Naruto commented as the three sprawled on the ground. A crowd had gathered now, murmuring and pointing. The white-haired boy stared at Naruto with undisguised awe. That was amazing. You moved so fast. Naruto grinned, rubbing the back of his head. It was nothing, really. You okay? The boy nodded, then seemed to remember the accusation. Oh. Check my bag, I didn't steal anything. He thrust the satchel toward Naruto, who opened it to find only a small loaf of bread and what looked like a map. See? Nothing stolen, Naruto declared, showing the contents to the crowd. He turned to the three men who were picking themselves up. You owe this kid an apology. The leader spat on the ground. Whatever. Not worth our time. He snatched his sword back when Naruto offered it and stomped away, his companions following. As the crowd dispersed, the white-haired boy beamed up at Naruto. Thank you so much. I'm Bell. Bell Cranel. Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto replied, shaking the offered hand. Nice to meet you, Bell. Bell's eyes widened. That's an unusual name. Are you from the Far East? Your fighting style was incredible. Naruto's stomach chose that moment to growl loudly again. He laughed, slightly embarrassed. Sorry about that. I'm kind of new in town. Haven't eaten in a while. Bell immediately brightened. I can help with that. It's the least I can do. I don't have much money, but I know a place that serves great food for cheap. As they walked, Bell peppered Naruto with questions. Where was he from? Was he an adventurer? What familia did he belong to? Naruto answered vaguely, trying to gather information while not revealing his complete ignorance of this world. The hostess of fertility, the tavern Bell led him to, was bustling with activity. Patrons of various races ate, drank, and argued loudly. A tall, impressive woman with cat ears and a stern expression managed the chaos with practiced authority. That's Mia Grand, Bell whispered. She owns the place. Used to be a high-level adventurer before retiring. They found seats at a small table in the corner, and Bell ordered for them both, some kind of stew and bread that smelled amazing when it arrived. Naruto dug in immediately, nearly moaning at the first taste. This is incredible, he said between bites. Almost as good as Ichiraku's. Ichiraku's? Bell asked. Naruto's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. A ramen place, where I'm from. Bell seemed to sense the shift in mood. So, you're not from Ororio, then? Ororio? Is that this city? Bell nodded, looking surprised. You didn't know? Ororio is the greatest city in the world. It's built around the dungeon, where adventurers from all familias go to fight monsters and collect magic stones. Naruto tried to process this information while continuing to eat. Dungeons? Magic stones? Familias? This world was getting weirder by the minute. Sorry, Naruto said between bites. I'm really not from around here. I can tell, Bell said, but kindly. Your clothes are strange, and you fight differently than any adventurer I've seen. A burst of raucous laughter drew their attention to a group entering the tavern. They wore matching equipment with some kind of wolf emblem, and carried themselves with the easy confidence of seasoned fighters. That's the Loki Familia, Bell whispered. They're one of the strongest groups in Ororio. And that's, his voice took on a dreamy quality, Ace Wallenstein. Naruto followed Bell's gaze to a beautiful blonde woman with golden eyes. She moved with a fighter's grace, and even from across the room, Naruto could sense her power. You like her, huh? Naruto grinned, nudging Bell. The boy turned bright red. What? No. I mean, she's the sword princess. The strongest female adventurer in the city. So. Strong girls are awesome, Naruto said, thinking briefly of Sakura and Tsunade. The thought of his friends sent a pang through him. Were they looking for him? Did time even pass the same way between dimensions? He needed to find a way home. Hey, Bell, Naruto said, lowering his voice. This might sound weird, but, do you know anyone who might know about, different worlds? Or dimensional travel? Bell's eyes widened. Different worlds? You mean like the stories about heroes being summoned from other realms? He thought for a moment. I don't know much about that, but if anyone would, it would be the gods. Gods? Naruto repeated. Yeah. The deities who came down from the upper world to live among mortals. They each lead a familia, a group of followers they bless with their power. Bell pulled down his shirt collar slightly, revealing a strange symbol on his back. This is my fauna, the blessing from my goddess, Hestia. Naruto stared at the mark. It reminded him vaguely of a cursed seal, but it didn't give off the same malevolent energy. If anything, it felt warm, protective. Your goddess could help me? Bell brightened. Maybe. Goddess Hestia is really kind. She might know something, or know someone who does. We could go see her after we eat. Naruto nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. That would be great. Thanks, Bell. As they finished their meal, the tavern door opened again, and an unusual hush fell over the normally boisterous crowd. Naruto turned to see what had caused the change in atmosphere. A tall, imposing man with an eye patch and a regal bearing had entered, flanked by severe-looking attendants. His single eye swept the room with casual disdain. That's Zeus, Bell whispered, awe and fear mingling in his voice. He rarely comes to places like this. Something must be happening. Zeus. The name triggered a vague memory from Naruto's academy days, lessons about ancient myths from distant lands. If these gods named themselves after those legendary figures, or worse, actually were those beings of immense power. We should go, Naruto said quietly. I don't want to attract attention. Too late. The god's single eye had locked onto their table, or more specifically, onto Naruto himself. A smile that didn't reach his eye curved the deity's lips, and he began moving purposefully toward them. Bell Crannel, Zeus greeted, ignoring Naruto entirely. I've been looking for you. Bell stood hastily, bowing. Lord Zeus. What can I do for you? My sources tell me you've been making quite the impression in the dungeon lately. For one so inexperienced. The god's tone made the compliment sound like an accusation. I've just been trying my best, sir, Bell replied, clearly uncomfortable. Zeus's eye slid to Naruto. And who might your companion be? I don't recognize him from any familia. Naruto stood, meeting the god's gaze directly. Something about this guy rubbed him the wrong way, reminded him too much of people like Danzo who viewed others as pieces on a game board. Naruto Uzumaki, he said simply, offering no explanation. Zeus's eyebrow raised fractionally. Interesting. Your energy is unusual. He sniffed the air like he could smell something off about Naruto. Not from around here, are you? Just passing through, Naruto replied, keeping his tone neutral. Indeed. Zeus studied him a moment longer, then turned back to Bell. When you tire of playing errand boy for that hearth tender, remember that real power requires ambition. My door is always open. With that, he turned and left, his entourage following. What was that about? Naruto asked once Zeus was gone. Bell looked troubled. Zeus, he used to be one of the most powerful gods in Ororyo. His familia was legendary. But something happened, and most of his followers were lost. He's been trying to rebuild, recruiting promising adventurers. He fidgeted uncomfortably. He's asked me before, but I could never leave Goddess Hestia. Naruto clapped Bell on the shoulder. Good for you. Loyalty matters. They paid for their meal and left, Bell leading Naruto through increasingly narrow streets until they reached what appeared to be an abandoned church. Bell pushed open the door, revealing a modest space that had been converted into simple living quarters. Goddess. I'm back. Bell called. Bell. A cheerful voice responded before a small figure came bounding into view. Naruto blinked in surprise. This was a goddess. The young woman before him looked barely older than he was, with long black hair tied in twin tails and bright blue eyes. She wore a white dress with blue ribbons and had an unexpected figure that her small stature initially disguised. What struck Naruto most, however, was the genuine warmth in her smile as she greeted Bell. I was worried when you took so long. Did something? She stopped abruptly upon noticing Naruto, her eyes widening. Oh. You brought a friend. This is Naruto Uzumaki, Bell explained. He helped me out when some guys were giving me trouble. He's new to Ororyo and, well, he has some questions that I thought you might be able to answer. Hestia studied Naruto with surprising intensity, her head tilting slightly. You're different, she said finally. Your energy feels unlike anything I've encountered before. Naruto shifted uncomfortably. Yeah, I get that a lot lately. Hestia smiled suddenly, the serious moment passing. Well, any friend of Bell's is welcome here. I'm Hestia, goddess of the hearth and home. Nice to meet you, Naruto said, finding himself returning her smile despite his wariness. There was something genuinely comforting about her presence, like sitting beside a warm fire on a cold night. Naruto was wondering about other worlds, Bell said hesitantly. About traveling between them? Hestia's eyes sharpened with interest. Other worlds? That's not a common topic of conversation. She gestured to some cushions near a small fire pit in the center of the room. Why don't we sit down and you can tell me more? Naruto hesitated, then decided honesty was his best option. These people had been kind to him, and he needed allies in this strange place. He sat down and began his story, an abbreviated version that covered his identity as a ninja, his world, and how he'd ended up here during a battle with a powerful enemy. Throughout his explanation, Hestia listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Bell's eyes grew wider with each revelation. You're actually from another world. Bell exclaimed when Naruto finished. That's incredible. And you can create copies of yourself and manipulate energy and, Bell, Hestia interrupted gently, her expression thoughtful. Would you mind getting us some water? I think this conversation might take a while. Once Bell had left the room, Hestia leaned forward, her voice lowering. You didn't mention everything, did you? There's something else, something powerful, inside you. Naruto stiffened. How did you? I'm a goddess, Naruto. Even diminished as we are in the lower world, I can sense such things. She smiled reassuringly. Don't worry, I'm not judging. Many adventurers carry burdens and secrets. After a moment's hesitation, Naruto told her about Kurama. To his surprise, Hestia didn't seem shocked or frightened. A nine-tailed fox spirit of immense power, she mused. We have legends of similar beings, though none quite like your Kurama. This confirms what I suspected, though, you carry fire in your very essence. Fire? Hestia nodded. It's my domain, the hearth, home, fire in its nurturing aspect. When you entered my presence, I could feel it resonating with something in you. She gazed at the small flames dancing in the fire pit. Cross-dimensional travel is beyond even most gods' abilities, Naruto. I can't simply send you home. But perhaps there's a reason you arrived here, specifically. Like fate? Naruto asked skeptically. Hestia laughed. The Fates are my cousins, actually. Terrible conversationalists. But no, I meant something more, purposeful. Her expression grew serious. There have been disturbances lately. Strange fluctuations in divine energy. Monsters in the dungeon acting in unusual ways. Some of the elder gods are concerned. Bell returned with water, setting cups before them before rejoining the conversation. Is this about the rumors? About monsters organizing attacks? Hestia nodded. Among other things. Time itself seems unstable in certain areas. Ancient seals weakening. She fixed Naruto with an intense gaze. Your arrival may be connected. Naruto frowned. I didn't cause any of that. No, but perhaps you were brought here to help address it. Hestia leaned forward. Naruto Uzumaki, how would you like to join my familia? The question caught him off guard. Your familia? Yes. Currently, it's just Bell and me. But you need allies in this world, and I. She hesitated, a flash of vulnerability crossing her features. I believe you were sent to me for a reason. The hearth recognizes its own. Goddess, are you sure? Bell asked, not unkindly. We barely know him. Sometimes, Bell, the heart knows what the mind does not yet understand. Hestia smiled at Naruto. As a member of my familia, you would receive my blessing, my fauna. It would enhance your natural abilities and allow you to grow stronger in ways specific to this world. In return, you would represent me and help protect what I stand for, home, hearth, family. And this would help me find a way back to my world. Naruto asked. Hestia's expression softened. I cannot promise that. But with my blessing, you would have access to resources and knowledge that might help. And until then, you would have a place to belong. A place to belong. The word struck Naruto deeply. He'd spent so much of his early life without that, until Team 7, until his friends in Konoha had become his family. Now, stranded in a strange world, that sense of belonging was what he missed most. I don't know how long I'll be here, Naruto warned. If I find a way home. Then you will always be welcome at my hearth, wherever you go, Hestia said simply. That is my domain, after all, welcoming those who need a home, even if only temporarily. Naruto looked at Bell, who gave him an encouraging nod. Alright, Naruto decided. I'll join your familia. Hestia clapped her hands together, beaming. Wonderful. We can perform the ritual right away. Her smile turned slightly mischievous. You'll need to remove your shirt. My shirt? Naruto asked, confused. The fauna is placed on your back, Bell explained, turning slightly red. It's a bit intimate. Oh. Naruto shrugged and pulled off his jacket and shirt. Years of training had left him without much modesty. Hestia instructed him to lie face down on a nearby couch. This will feel strange, she warned, but try to relax. Naruto felt small, warm hands on his back, then a drop of something that seemed to burn and cool simultaneously. Hestia began to chant in a language he didn't recognize, but which reminded him vaguely of the ancient texts in the Hokage's private library. The sensation began as warmth spreading across his back, but quickly intensified. Naruto gritted his teeth as power, different from chakra but no less potent, flowed into him. Inside his mind, Kurama growled. "Something's happening," the fox warned. "This power, it's reacting with our chakra." The burning sensation increased, and Naruto could feel something changing, not just on his skin, but deeper, in the very core of his being where his chakra networks and Kurama's seal intertwined. "Goddess?" Bell's voice sounded concerned. "Is it supposed to glow like that?" "No," Hestia replied, sounding equally surprised. I've never seen a reaction like this before." The pain peaked suddenly, and Naruto couldn't hold back a shout. His vision filled with orange-red light, and for a moment, he thought he glimpsed figures in the flames, 9 shadows with tails swirling around a woman tending an eternal fire. Then, abruptly, it ended. The burning sensation faded to a pleasant warmth that settled into his muscles like he'd just finished a good training session. Naruto pushed himself up, feeling oddly energized despite the ordeal. "What happened?" he asked, turning to find both Bell and Hestia staring at him with wide eyes. "Your fauna," Hestia whispered. "It's extraordinary." She held out a small hand mirror, angling it so Naruto could see his reflection and turn to glimpse his back. What he saw made him gasp. Instead of the simple symbol Bell had shown him, Naruto's back now bore an intricate design. At its center was what appeared to be a stylized flame, but woven throughout were symbols he recognized from his own world, the spiral of Uzushio, patterns reminiscent of the nine-tailed seal, and something that looked suspiciously like the flying thunder god formula his father had created. "I've never seen anything like it," Hestia said, recovering her composure. "When my blessing merged with your unique energy, it created something new." She touched the mark gently, sending a warm tingle down Naruto's spine. "You are now officially the second member of the Hestia familia, Naruto Uzumaki. But more than that, you appear to be something this world has never seen before." "What do you mean?" Naruto asked, pulling his shirt back on. Hestia's expression was a mixture of awe and concern. "Your status, the measurement of your abilities that the fauna reveals, it doesn't follow normal patterns. Most adventurers have standard categories: strength, endurance, dexterity, agility, magic. Yours has those, but also, something else." "Something else?" "Time manipulation," Hestia said quietly. "And fire affinity beyond anything I've encountered. It's as if my blessing recognized aspects of you that even I didn't fully perceive." She took a deep breath. "Naruto Uzumaki, I believe you may be the first fire sage this world has ever known, one who burns time itself." Bell looked between them, clearly trying to process this information. "Is that good?" "It's unprecedented," Hestia replied. "And potentially very powerful. But it also means others will take notice." She gave Naruto a serious look. "We should keep this between us for now. At least until you learn to control these new aspects of your power." Naruto nodded, already feeling the difference in his body. His chakra flowed more easily now, and there was a new energy mingled with it, something warm and steady like a banked flame. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now," Bell said with an excited grin, "we take you to the dungeon." The next morning found Naruto standing before an enormous tower that dominated Orario's skyline. Bell had explained that this was Babel, the structure built over the dungeon's entrance to contain the monsters that continuously spawned within its depths. "The guild maintains order," Bell explained as they entered a large building adjacent to the tower. "Adventurers register with them, receive advisors, exchange magic stones for currency, and get information about the dungeon's floors." Inside, adventurers of all descriptions crowded around notice boards or lined up at counters staffed by official-looking personnel. Bell led Naruto to a desk where a pretty elf woman with green hair was sorting papers. "Good morning, Miss Ina. Belle called cheerfully. The woman looked up, adjusting her glasses as she smiled at Belle. Belle. Good to see you. Who's your friend? This is Naruto Uzumaki, the newest member of our familia. Naruto, this is Ina Tool, my guild advisor. Ina studied Naruto with professional interest. Another member of the Hestia familia? That's unexpected. She extended a hand. Welcome to Orario, Mr. Uzumaki. Just Naruto is fine, he replied, shaking her hand. Naruto, then. Will you be registering as an adventurer today? Belle nodded eagerly. We wanted to get his guild card and maybe explore the upper floors. Nothing dangerous for his first day. Ina's expression turned serious. The dungeon is always dangerous, Belle, even the upper floors. She turned to Naruto. Do you have any combat experience? Naruto and Belle exchanged glances. They had agreed to keep Naruto's true origins vague for now. Some, Naruto said simply. I can handle myself. He's really strong. Belle added. I've seen him fight. Ina looked skeptical but proceeded with the registration process. After answering questions about his, fictional, background and signing several forms, Naruto received a small card identifying him as a level 1 adventurer of the Hestia familia. This doesn't quite capture what you are, Belle whispered as they left the guild, but it's better if people underestimate you at first. Naruto grinned. I'm used to being underestimated. They walked toward Babel, passing through security checkpoints where stern-faced guards inspected their guild cards. Inside, they found themselves in a massive circular chamber with stone staircases spiraling down into darkness. Welcome to the dungeon, Belle said, a hint of reverence in his voice. Where adventurers risk everything for glory, wealth, and power. Naruto peered down into the depths. And you do this, for fun? Belle laughed. For purpose. To become stronger, to make Goddess Hestia proud, he blushed slightly, impress someone special. Everyone has their reasons. And what will be mine? Naruto wondered aloud. Belle clapped him on the shoulder. You'll figure it out. For now, let's focus on getting you familiar with how things work down here. They descended the stairs, the temperature dropping noticeably with each level. Belle explained how the dungeon worked, how monsters formed from the walls themselves, how they dropped magic stones when defeated, how deeper floors contain stronger monsters and more valuable rewards. Most new adventurers start on the first 5 floors, Belle said. But with your skills, I think we can safely go to the 10th floor today. Whatever you think is best, Naruto replied, trusting Belle's experience in this world. They encountered their first monsters on the 3rd floor, small, goblin-like creatures that emerged from the walls with angry shrieks. Belle drew a knife and dispatched one with practiced efficiency. Your turn, he called to Naruto. Naruto faced the approaching monster, curious to test how his abilities worked in this environment. He gathered chakra, finding it responded more readily than before, infused with that new warm energy from Hestia's blessing. He formed a Rasengan in his palm, smaller than usual but perfectly controlled. The monster charged, and Naruto sidestepped, driving the spiraling sphere into its back. The creature exploded with more force than he'd anticipated, leaving nothing but dust and a small glowing stone. Belle stared, jaw dropping. What was that? Rasengan, Naruto said, picking up the magic stone. Though it felt different. Stronger. That was amazing. I've never seen magic like that before. It's not exactly magic, Naruto started to explain, then paused as he sensed movement behind them. More incoming. A group of monsters rounded the corner, larger than the first, with sharper claws. Belle readied his knife, but Naruto decided to try something else. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 5 perfect copies of Naruto appeared in puffs of smoke, each grinning confidently. Belle nearly fell over in shock. You can duplicate yourself? The clones charged forward, engaging the monsters with taijutsu. Naruto noticed immediately that his clones seemed more substantial than usual, less likely to disperse with a single hit. Another effect of Hestia's blessing? Within moments, the monsters were defeated, leaving a small pile of magic stones. Bell collected them in a pouch, still shaking his head in disbelief. Naruto, those abilities, they're incredible. I've never seen anything like them, even from high-level adventurers. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, slightly embarrassed. They're pretty standard where I come from. Standard? Your world must be. Bell's eyes widened suddenly, looking past Naruto. Watch out! Naruto spun to find a much larger monster, a hulking minotaur-like creature that definitely didn't belong on these upper floors, charging straight toward them, its eyes glowing with murderous intent. Irregularity! Bell shouted, pushing Naruto aside. That's a ninth-floor monster. It shouldn't be here. The Minotaur roared, swinging a massive fist that Bell barely dodged. Despite his earlier confidence, fear flashed across the young adventurer's face. Clearly, this monster was beyond what he'd been prepared to face today. Naruto didn't hesitate. He formed the familiar cross sign with his fingers. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. This time, 20 clones appeared, surrounding the Minotaur. They attacked in coordinated waves, but the monster's hide was tough, and its strength was enormous. It smashed through several clones, reducing them to smoke, and continued its rampage. We need to retreat. Bell called, helping another adventurer who had been caught in the monster's path. This is too dangerous. But Naruto saw other frightened adventurers behind them, inexperienced fighters who wouldn't stand a chance against this creature. Running wasn't an option. Get them out of here, Naruto told Bell. I'll handle this. But, trust me. Bell hesitated, then nodded, beginning to usher other adventurers back toward the stairs. Naruto faced the Minotaur, which had noticed the evacuation and was charging toward the retreating adventurers. He needed to stop it, fast. Reaching deep within himself, Naruto accessed Kurama's chakra. The familiar warmth surged through him, but this time, it mixed with the fire-like energy of Hestia's blessing. Orange-gold flames seemed to erupt around him, forming a cloak that resembled both Kurama's chakra mode and actual fire. What's happening? Kurama growled within him. I don't know, but let's use it. Naruto replied internally. He charged forward with incredible speed, leaving a trail of burning afterimages that seemed to linger in reality longer than they should. The Minotaur swung at him, but Naruto was already behind it, then beside it, then above it, moving so quickly it appeared he existed in multiple places simultaneously. Each time he struck the monster, his fists left burning impressions that continued to damage it even after he'd moved on. It was as if he was burning holes in time itself, creating pockets where his attacks continued to exist after he'd physically moved away. The Minotaur roared in confusion and pain, unable to track Naruto's movements or defend against attacks that seemed to come from multiple directions at once. Finally, Naruto gathered chakra into his palm, forming a Rasengan that swirled with both blue chakra and golden fire. He drove it into the monster's chest with a shout. Rasengan. The impact created an explosion of energy that sent Naruto flying backward. When the dust settled, nothing remained of the Minotaur except a large magic stone and scorch marks on the dungeon floor that seemed to flicker in and out of existence, as if they weren't quite anchored in time. Naruto stood, the flaming chakra cloak fading. He felt exhilarated but not exhausted, another difference from his normal chakra mode usage. He collected the magic stone just as Bell and several other adventurers returned, staring at the scene with wide eyes. That was. Bell seemed at a loss for words. Impossible, someone finished for him. Naruto turned to find the blonde woman from the tavern, Ace Wallenstein, studying him with intense golden eyes. Behind her stood several members of her familia, all looking equally shocked. No level 1 could defeat a Minotaur, she stated flatly. Especially not alone. Naruto shrugged, unsure how to respond. It was attacking innocent people. I did what I had to do. Ace continued to stare at him, her expression unreadable. Finally, she asked, "What familia are you from?" "Hestia familia," Bell answered proudly, moving to stand beside Naruto. "He just joined yesterday." Murmurs spread through the gathered adventurers. Hestia familia? The tiny, unknown group with just one member until now. And this newcomer had just single-handedly defeated a monster that would challenge experienced adventurers. Ace's eyes narrowed slightly. "Those afterimages during your movement, they weren't normal. You weren't just moving fast, you were affecting time itself." Naruto tensed. Hestia had warned him to keep that aspect of his abilities secret. "Just a technique from my homeland," he said vaguely. Before Ace could question him further, alarms began to sound throughout the dungeon. Red magical lights flashed along the walls, and a voice echoed through the corridors. "Attention all adventurers. Multiple irregularities detected on upper floors. Evacuation protocol initiated. Please proceed to nearest exit in orderly fashion." "More monsters breaking through from lower floors," one of Ace's companions explained grimly. "This has been happening more frequently lately." Ace nodded to her team. "We'll clear a path to the surface. Protect the lower-level adventurers." She gave Naruto one last measuring look. "We'll continue this conversation another time, Hestia familia." As she led her team deeper into the dungeon to confront the threat, Bell turned to Naruto with a mixture of awe and concern. "That was Ace Wallenstein. The Sword Princess. And she noticed you." He lowered his voice. "But she also noticed your time abilities. Goddess Hestia wanted us to keep that quiet." Naruto nodded, frowning. "I know. But I couldn't let that monster hurt anyone." He glanced at the retreating form of Ace and her team. "Is it bad that she knows?" Bell bit his lip. "Not bad, necessarily. But, interesting. The Loki familia is powerful and influential. If they take an interest in you." He shook his head. "Let's get back to the surface and tell Goddess Hestia what happened." As they joined the stream of adventurers heading upward, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Not just by the curious adventurers who had witnessed his battle, but by something else, something ancient and patient, observing from somewhere beyond normal perception. Inside his mind, Kurama growled uneasily. "Something's not right about this place, Naruto. That monster appearing where it shouldn't, these new abilities mixing with our chakra, and there's something else. Something watching us." "I feel it too," Naruto replied silently. "Like when we sensed Madara's presence during the war." "Be careful," Kurama warned. "Gods in this world may not be what they seem." News of Naruto's fight with the Minotaur spread quickly through Orio. By the time they returned to the church that evening, Hestia was waiting for them with a worried expression. "I've been hearing rumors all day," she said as they entered. "About a new member of my familia who moves like lightning and leaves burning afterimages." Her eyes fixed on Naruto. "Care to explain?" Naruto recounted what had happened in the dungeon, with Bell enthusiastically adding details about how amazing Naruto's abilities had been. Hestia listened attentively, her expression growing more troubled. "The Sword Princess witnessed this? And commented specifically on the time manipulation aspect?" Naruto nodded. "I didn't confirm anything, but she definitely noticed something unusual." Hestia paced the small room. "This complicates things. I had hoped to keep your unique abilities quiet until we better understood them. Now Loki will be curious, and where Loki goes, other gods will follow." She sighed. "We should expect visitors." "Is that bad?" Naruto asked. "Not necessarily. But gods can be competitive. Possessive of unique things." Hestia smiled wryly. "And you, Naruto Uzumaki, are definitely unique." Before they could discuss further, a knock came at the door. Bell answered it to find a small, robed figure waiting outside. Message for the Hestia Familia, the messenger announced, handing over an elegant envelope before disappearing into the evening shadows. Hestia opened it, her eyebrows rising as she read. Well, that didn't take long. We've been invited to a gathering at the Twilight Manor tomorrow evening. She looked up. The headquarters of the Loki Familia. Already? Belle squeaked, looking both terrified and excited. We've never been invited there before. Of course not. We weren't interesting before. Hestia's tone was dry. Now we have a member who can apparently bend time and single-handedly defeat monsters well above his supposed level. She handed the invitation to Naruto. They're not even being subtle about their interest. The invitation specifically mentions wanting to welcome the newest flame of Ororio to the adventuring community. Naruto examined the elegant card. Should we go? Hestia considered for a moment. Declining would only increase suspicion. Better to attend and control the narrative. She smiled suddenly, a mischievous glint in her eye. Besides, I never turned down an opportunity to annoy Loki. Belle looked nervous. But what do we tell them about Naruto's abilities? The truth, to a point, Hestia decided. Naruto is from a distant land with different fighting traditions. His abilities stem from a combination of his homeland's techniques and my blessing, which resonated unusually strongly with his natural affinity for fire. And the time manipulation? Naruto asked. Hestia's expression grew serious. We'll say it's an unexpected manifestation still being explored. True enough without revealing too much. She placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. But be careful. Gods can sense when mortals lie directly, though misdirection and omission are fair game. Naruto nodded, already planning how to approach the situation. I've dealt with difficult politicians and leaders before. I can handle this. I'm sure you can, Hestia said with a smile. Now, let's prepare for tomorrow. We need to make sure the Hestia Familia makes a proper impression. The Twilight Manor loomed against the evening sky, its elegant architecture illuminated by magic-powered lamps that cast a warm glow over the approaching guests. Naruto, Belle, and Hestia stood at the entrance, preparing themselves for what promised to be an interesting evening. Hestia had insisted they look their best. Belle wore a formal version of his usual outfit, while Naruto had been provided with new clothes that suited Orario's fashion, dark pants, a deep orange shirt, and a black jacket with subtle flame patterns embroidered along the edges. Hestia herself wore a more elaborate version of her usual white dress, with gold accents that highlighted her divine status. Remember, Hestia whispered as they approached the guards, we have nothing to hide, but everything to protect. Be truthful but careful. Naruto nodded, squaring his shoulders. Whatever challenges this evening held, he would face them head-on, just as he always had. As they entered the grand hall of the Twilight Manor, all eyes turned to the unexpected guests, the tiny Hestia Familia and their mysterious new flame. Chapter 2, Gods and Monsters. The Twilight Manor's grand hall was packed with Orario's elite adventurers and their divine patrons. Massive chandeliers cast golden light across polished marble floors where clusters of guests gathered, their voices creating a steady hum of conversation that occasionally broke into laughter or exclamations. Naruto felt dozens of eyes tracking their entrance, some curious, others calculating. He'd experienced similar scrutiny before in Konoha, back when people saw him only as the Ninetales container. The difference now was that these stares held interest rather than fear or hatred. Hestia. You actually came. A tall, slim goddess with vibrant red hair and mischievous eyes approached them, her grin wide but not entirely friendly. And you brought your entire familia. Both of them. Hestia's smile remained fixed. Loki. Thank you for the invitation. As you can see, we're now 3. Loki's sharp eyes landed on Naruto, studying him with undisguised curiosity. So this is the rookie who took down a Minotaur solo? Doesn't look like much. Appearances can be deceiving, Naruto replied with an easy smile. Something tells me you know that better than most. Loki's eyebrows shot up, then she burst into laughter. Oh ho! He's got bite. I like that. She circled Naruto, examining him from all angles. Strange energy you've got, boy. Never felt anything quite like it in all my centuries. I'm from far away. Naruto said simply. Clearly. Loki's eyes narrowed. But far away doesn't usually come with abilities that make my sword princess raise questions. Bell shifted nervously beside them, but Hestia stepped forward smoothly. Naruto's talents are unique, a perfect resonance between his homeland's techniques and my blessing. Hestia's smile was innocent but her eyes sharp. Surely you didn't invite us just to interrogate my new child, Loki? That would be terribly rude. Loki waved a hand dismissively. Of course not. This is a celebration. Your tiny familia finally becoming slightly less tiny is cause for drinks, don't you think? She clapped her hands, and servers appeared with glasses of sparkling wine. To growth. May the Hestia familia continue to surprise us. As the toast was made, Naruto felt more gazes land on him, including one that sent a chill down his spine. He turned slightly to find a tall, elegant woman with silver hair watching him from across the room. Unlike the others, her interest seemed less curious and more predatory. Freya, Hestia whispered, following his gaze. Be careful with that one. Her interest is never casual, and rarely beneficial to the object of her attention. Before Naruto could respond, they were approached by another group, the Loki Familia adventurers he'd seen in the dungeon, led by Ace Wallenstein. The blonde swordswoman's expression remained neutral, but her golden eyes were intense as they focused on him. We meet again, she said simply. Naruto nodded. Under better circumstances this time. A green-haired elf beside Ace spoke up, his tone formal but curious. I am Reverio Joe's elf, executive of the Loki Familia. Your display in the dungeon was impressive for a novice adventurer. Thanks, I think, Naruto replied with a small smile. A muscular, dog-eared man grinned broadly. Bet Loga. Maybe you'll actually give us some competition, unlike most of the trash in this city. Despite his harsh words, there was genuine interest in his eyes. Bell looked starstruck, standing beside Naruto and barely managing to introduce himself without stammering. Naruto couldn't blame him, these were clearly elite adventurers, the equivalent of Jonin or Anbu in his world. We'd be interested in seeing more of your abilities, Ace said directly. Perhaps a friendly match. Ace. A small, energetic girl with auburn hair bounded up. Are you challenging the new guy already? You're so direct. She turned to Naruto with a bright smile. I'm Tiona Hirayut. And this, she pulled forward a taller, more serious-looking version of herself, is my sister Tioni. Nice to meet you both, Naruto replied, already feeling more at ease with Tiona's friendly energy. So how about it? Tiona pressed. Wanna spar with us? We've got a training field out back. Before Naruto could answer, a smooth voice interrupted. Perhaps a more structured demonstration would be appropriate. The crowd parted to reveal a striking man with silver hair and cold blue eyes. Power radiated from him in a way Naruto had only felt from the strongest shinobi, or from Hestia herself. Lord Odin, Loki said, bowing slightly. I didn't expect you to grace us with your presence tonight. The god's single visible eye, the other covered by an elegant patch, focused on Naruto. When I heard of a newcomer who leaves burning impressions in time itself, how could I stay away? His smile didn't reach his eye. I propose a test of skills, my Freyr against Hestia's new flame. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Naruto glanced at Hestia, who looked troubled. A friendly match is one thing, she said carefully. But Naruto has only just received his blessing. All the more impressive if he performs well, Odin countered smoothly. Unless you doubt your champion's abilities. Naruto recognized the manipulation for what it was. This god wanted to see what he could do, probably to assess whether he was a threat, an opportunity, or both. "I don't mind," Naruto said confidently. "As long as it's just a friendly match." Odin's smile widened. "Excellent. Frere." A tall warrior stepped forward from Odin's entourage. He wore sleek armor emblazoned with raven symbols and carried a spear that hummed with power. His eyes held the calm certainty of a veteran fighter. "It would be my honor," Frere said, bowing slightly. "The courtyard has sufficient space, if that suits you." The gathering moved outside, forming a wide circle around a stone courtyard illuminated by magic-imbued lamps. Naruto stood at one end, while Frere took position at the other. The assembled gods and adventurers watched with eager anticipation. "Standard rules," Loki announced, apparently appointing herself referee. "First to yield or become unable to continue loses. No lethal strikes." She eyed both combatants. "Begin when ready." Frere adopted a fighting stance, his spear held at the ready. "I've heard interesting things about you, Naruto Uzumaki. Show me if they're true." Naruto sized up his opponent. Frere moved with the balanced precision of an experienced fighter, someone who had faced countless battles and emerged victorious. His spear would give him reach advantage, and the magic thrumming through it suggested additional capabilities. "Let's find out together," Naruto replied, settling into his own stance. For a moment, neither moved. Then Frere struck with blinding speed, his spear a silver blur as it thrust toward Naruto's chest. Most observers expected the newcomer to dodge or block awkwardly, what they didn't expect was for Naruto to simply vanish. Frere's spear met empty air. The warrior spun instantly, blocking as Naruto appeared behind him, kunai in hand. The metal rang as the weapons connected, and Frere's eyes widened slightly, the first sign that he was impressed. "Fast," he acknowledged, pushing back with strength that would have overwhelmed most opponents. Naruto disengaged, flipping away to create distance. "You too." What followed was a dance of attacks and counterattacks, each fighter probing the other's defenses. Naruto deliberately held back, using basic taijutsu and kunai techniques without chakra enhancement. No need to reveal everything immediately. The crowd watched, increasingly engaged as the match continued with neither combatant gaining a clear advantage. Bell cheered enthusiastically from the sidelines while Hestia observed with focused attention. After several minutes of this, Frere stepped back, his expression serious. "You're holding back," he stated. "As am I. Shall we show a little more of our true capabilities?" Naruto grinned. "Sure. You first." Frere's spear began to glow with blue-white energy. "My Gagner thirsts for worthy challenges." He spun the weapon in a complex pattern, and suddenly the air around him filled with spectral ravens that launched toward Naruto. "Magic manifestation," Bell gasped from the sidelines. "High-level stuff." Naruto didn't flinch as the energy constructs swarmed toward him. Instead, he formed a familiar hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 5 perfect copies of Naruto appeared in puffs of smoke, eliciting gasps from the crowd. The clones scattered, intercepting the raven constructs while the original Naruto charged directly at Frere. "Interesting technique," the warrior commented, adapting quickly to the multiple opponents. His spear work became more elaborate, cutting down clones while maintaining a defensive perimeter around himself. Naruto used the distractions to analyze Frere's fighting style. The warrior was disciplined, efficient, clearly used to facing multiple opponents. Time to change tactics. Circling around, Naruto formed a Rasengan in his palm, not at full power, but enough to make an impression. The spiraling blue energy caught the attention of every god in the vicinity. "That's not magic," someone murmured. "At least, not any magic I've seen before." Frere spotted the technique and smiled grimly. "Now we're getting somewhere." He slammed his spear into the ground, creating a shockwave of energy that dispelled Naruto's remaining clones. The warrior then charged, spear aimed not at Naruto but at the Rasengan itself. The weapons connected with a thunderous crash. Blue chakra met divine blessed metal, creating a swirling vortex of energy that pushed both combatants back. Frere's spear vibrated violently, while Naruto's Rasengan destabilized, sending sparks of chakra dancing across the courtyard. Neither technique fully overcame the other, resulting in a stalemate that left both fighters breathing harder but smiling. Enough, Odin called, stepping forward. A most illuminating exhibition. Naruto let his Rasengan dissipate as Frere lowered his spear. They bowed to each other, genuine respect evident in the gesture. "You're very good," Frere said quietly. "But still unfamiliar with how power works in this world. Your energy, it's raw, unrefined by our standards." "I'm learning," Naruto replied simply. The crowd began discussing the match excitedly, gods and mortals alike analyzing what they'd seen. Naruto rejoined Bell and Hestia, the latter giving him an approving nod. "You showed enough to satisfy curiosity without revealing your true capabilities," she murmured. "Well done." Odin approached them, his single eye gleaming with interest. "Your champion is impressive, Hestia. Such unusual techniques, not quite magic, not quite physical skill, but something in between." "As I said, he comes from far away," Hestia replied evenly. "Indeed." Odin's gaze lingered on Naruto. "We have traveled far ourselves, we gods, from realms beyond mortal comprehension. Perhaps your champion's homeland isn't so distant from our original divine domains." The implied question hung in the air. Naruto recognized the subtle interrogation and responded with deliberate vagueness. "My abilities come from years of training and sacrifice," he said truthfully. "The specifics would probably bore you." Odin chuckled. "I doubt that very much." His eyes shifted to something over Naruto's shoulder. "Ah, Zeus. Come meet Hestia's fascinating new child." Naruto turned to find the eye-patched god from the tavern approaching. Up close, Zeus emanated power that dwarfed even Odin's, ancient and barely contained beneath his casual exterior. "We've briefly met," Zeus said, studying Naruto with renewed interest. "Though I didn't realize then what an interesting addition you were to our little community." His eye flicked to Hestia. "You've always had a talent for finding diamonds in unexpected places, little niece." Hestia's smile tightened at the familial reference. "Just fortunate timing, uncle." "Indeed. Timing." Zeus's gaze returned to Naruto, suddenly intense. "Your techniques are fascinating, particularly how you seem to leave impressions in the fabric of time itself. Almost as if you're burning through the normal constraints of temporal physics." Naruto maintained a neutral expression, but internally, alarm bells rang. This god had picked up on the time aspect of his abilities after seeing only a standard match. "I'm still learning what I can do with Goddess Hestia's blessing," he replied carefully. Of course, of course." Zeus waved a hand dismissively, though his eye remained calculating. "We all have much to learn. Perhaps we could speak more, privately sometime. I have extensive knowledge that might help you understand your unique abilities." Before Naruto could respond, the floor suddenly trembled beneath them. Conversations halted as everyone froze, experienced adventurers immediately alert. A second, stronger tremor followed, and alarm bells began ringing throughout the manor. "Those are the city warning bells," Reveria said sharply, all pleasantries forgotten. Loki strode to the center of the courtyard, her usual playful demeanor replaced by commanding presence. "Reports coming in from the north wall. Monster outbreak." The casual gathering transformed instantly into a mobilization. Adventurers rushed to collect weapons while gods issued rapid orders to their familiars. "This is the third outbreak this month," Odin remarked grimly. "And each worse than the last. Monsters breaching the surface wasn't common before, was it?" Naruto asked Bell as they followed the flow toward the manor's exit. Bell shook his head. "It was rare, maybe once or twice a year at most. Now it's happening regularly, and the monsters seemed different. More coordinated. Hestia caught up to them, her expression serious. Be careful out there. This isn't just a normal monster attack, I can sense something else at work. What do you mean? Naruto asked. The divine barriers that help contain the dungeon have been weakening, she explained quickly. Some of us have been investigating, but... She glanced around at the other gods, lowering her voice. Not everyone shares information willingly. Outside the manor, chaos reigned. City guards directed civilians to shelter while adventurers streamed toward the northern district. The night sky glowed ominously with what looked like fires, and roars of monsters echoed between buildings. Let's go. Bell said, drawing his knife. The Hestia Familia protects the innocent. Naruto couldn't help smiling at Bell's earnest declaration, even in this dire situation. The kid reminded him of himself in many ways, determined to prove himself and protect others. They raced through the streets, joining other adventurers heading toward the disturbance. As they approached the northern wall, the extent of the situation became clear. A section of wall had collapsed, and monsters of various types were pouring through the gap, attacking anything in their path. The Loki Familia had already engaged, with A's cutting through monsters with breathtaking efficiency while Bet and the Amazonian sisters dealt with those that slipped past her. Other Familias fought in their own sectors, trying to contain the breach. We should help evacuate civilians, Bell suggested, pointing to a residential area where people were fleeing in panic. Naruto nodded. Good thinking. They split up, with Bell guiding frightened residents to safety while Naruto cleared paths through the monsters. He kept his techniques relatively simple, basic clones and Rasengan without tapping into Kurama's power or Hestia's fire blessing. As he dispatched a particularly large lizard-like creature, Naruto noticed something odd. Unlike the monsters in the dungeon, which had attacked wildly and individually, these seemed to be following a pattern, almost as if they were herding civilians toward specific areas. Kurama, he called internally. Are you seeing this? The fox's consciousness stirred. Yes. These aren't random attacks. There's purpose here. Following his instincts, Naruto tracked the monster movements, creating clones to handle immediate threats while he investigated the pattern. His suspicions grew as he observed monsters deliberately avoiding certain streets, while focusing attacks on others. They're driving people toward the eastern quarter, he realized. Breaking away from the main fighting, Naruto headed east, following the trail of strategic destruction. The sounds of battle faded behind him as he entered quieter streets where the evacuation had already completed, or so it appeared. A scream cut through the night. Naruto sprinted toward the sound, finding himself in a small plaza where a terrifying scene unfolded. A group of hooded figures surrounded several captured civilians, forcing them into a large circle carved into the stone ground. The circle glowed with sickly green energy, and at its center stood a man in elaborate robes, chanting in a language that made Naruto's skin crawl. Without hesitation, Naruto created a squad of shadow clones that descended on the gathering. The hooded figures, cultists, by the look of them, responded with surprising coordination, producing weapons that pulsed with the same green energy as the circle. Protect the ritual, the leader shouted. The harvester demands souls. Naruto engaged the nearest cultists, quickly discovering they were more dangerous than they appeared. Their weapons passed through his clones as if they weren't solid matter, and when one blade grazed his arm, he felt a chill that went beyond physical pain, as if it had touched his very life force. Time weapons, a voice called from behind him. Naruto glanced back to see A's Wallenstein entering the plaza, her golden eyes focused on the cultists. Their blades cut through the victim's timeline, aging them to death in seconds. As if to demonstrate, one cultist slashed at a clone, and instead of simply dispelling in smoke, the clone seemed to age rapidly, its form withering before collapsing into dust. Thanks for the warning, Naruto replied, adjusting his tactics. If direct engagement was risky, he'd try another approach. Gathering chakra into his feet, he launched himself high above the plaza, forming hand seals midair. Wind style, gale palm. A concentrated burst of wind chakra slammed into the group of cultists, scattering them and disrupting their formation. Ace took advantage immediately, her sword a blur as she engaged them with precision that spoke of years of experience fighting unusual opponents. "Free the civilians," she called to Naruto. "I'll handle these ones." Naruto landed near the ritual circle where the captured civilians huddled in terror. The circle's energy pulsed stronger now, the chanting from the robed leader growing more frantic. "It's too late," the man cried, his hood falling back to reveal glowing green eyes and a face marked with strange symbols. The timeline fractures. The harvester rises. The energy from the circle shot upward in a pillar of sickly light, and the ground began to rumble. From the center of the circle, something began to emerge, a massive, skeletal hand that clawed at the air itself, leaving visible tears in reality. "Everyone out, now!" Naruto shouted, creating clones to guide the civilians away from the circle. The cult leader laughed maniacally. "Witness the return of those who ruled before time was tamed. The servants of Kronos awaken." Kronos? Naruto had heard that name somewhere before, one of the history lessons Hestia had given him about this world's pantheon. He had no time to ponder as the skeletal hand was followed by an arm, then a partial torso, a massive creature climbing through what appeared to be a tear in reality itself. Its body was partially skeletal, partially composed of swirling temporal energy that distorted everything around it. "The harvester consumes all timelines," the cult leader proclaimed. Ace finished dispatching the last cultist and moved to Naruto's side, her expression grim. "This is beyond what we've seen before. We need to seal that rift. Any ideas how?" Naruto asked, eyeing the emerging monster. "Destroy the circle," she suggested. "Break the connection." Naruto nodded, forming a Rasengan in his palm, then paused. Standard chakra might not be effective against whatever temporal magic powered this ritual. Drawing deeper, he accessed the warm energy from Hestia's blessing, allowing it to flow into his technique. The Rasengan transformed, blue chakra spirals gaining flickering orange-gold flames that danced around the sphere. The heat it generated was intense but controlled, focused entirely on the spinning energy. "Stand back," he warned Ace, who stepped away, watching with keen interest. Naruto charged forward, ducking under a swipe from the partially emerged harvester, and slammed the flame-enhanced Rasengan into the center of the ritual circle. Flame Rasengan. The impact was immediate and dramatic. The fiery chakra collided with the temporal energy, creating a reaction that sent shockwaves through the plaza. The circle's lines began to burn away, not just physically, but as if the fire was consuming the very concept of the markings, erasing them from time itself. The harvester screeched, a sound that seemed to come from multiple timelines simultaneously, and began to be pulled back toward the rift. The cult leader screamed in fury, rushing at Naruto with a dagger pulsing with the same green energy. "You cannot stop what has been foretold. The age of Kronos returns." Ace moved with lightning speed, intercepting the cultist and disarming him with a precise strike. But the damage to reality was already done. The rift, though shrinking without the ritual's power, remained partially open. The harvester, now being dragged back, locked its hollow eye sockets on Naruto. A skeletal hand shot out with impossible speed, grasping him by the throat and pulling him toward the rift. "Naruto!" Ace called, unable to reach him in time. In that moment of crisis, something new awakened in Naruto. The flame blessing from Hestia surged through his chakra network, responding to his desperate need. Time seemed to slow around him as his perception accelerated. The harvester's grip was cold, not physically, but temporally, as if it was draining his very timeline. Naruto could feel years of his life being siphoned away, memories flickering before his eyes as if being consumed. "No," he growled, drawing on both Kurama's chakra and Hestia's fire. The energies combined in a way they never had before. Instead of just creating a protective cloak, the power condensed around Naruto's hands, forming gauntlets of flame that seemed to exist in multiple moments simultaneously, leaving burning afterimages with each movement. With these flame-wreathed hands, Naruto grasped the harvester's skeletal arm. Where they touched, the creature's bones began to age rapidly, not forward in time as its weapons had done to others, but backwards, reverting to dust as if they'd never formed in the first place. The harvester shrieked again, releasing Naruto as its arm disintegrated. The rift pulsed erratically, beginning to collapse in on itself without its emerging occupant to keep it stable. "It's closing!" Ace shouted, having subdued the cult leader. "Get away from there!" Naruto stumbled back from the destabilizing rift, watching as it contracted with increasing speed. The remaining portions of the harvester were pulled back through, its unearthly howl fading as the tear in reality sealed itself with a final flash of green light. The plaza fell silent, the only sounds being Naruto's heavy breathing and the distant noises of battle from the northern wall. He stared at his hands, where the flame gauntlets had already faded, leaving only a warm sensation and the memory of what he'd just done. "You reversed its timeline," Ace said quietly, approaching him with newfound respect in her eyes. "I've never seen anyone manipulate time like that." Naruto flexed his fingers, still feeling echoes of the power. "I didn't know I could do that either." The cult leader, now restrained by Ace, laughed bitterly. "It doesn't matter what you did. The seals are weakening everywhere. What is locked away will soon be free." His eyes, still glowing faintly, fixed on Naruto. "And you with fire in your veins and time at your fingertips, you're the key he's been waiting for." "Who's been waiting?" Naruto demanded. "The Lord of Time himself. Kronos." The man's laughter grew more unhinged. "He sees you now, Fire Sage. Across all timelines, he sees you." Before Naruto could question him further, reinforcements arrived, members of various familias who had detected the disturbance. Among them was Bell, who rushed to Naruto's side. "Are you okay?" "I felt something weird happening and came as fast as I could." "I'm fine," Naruto assured him, though the cultist's words echoed uncomfortably in his mind. "We stopped some kind of ritual that was summoning a monster." As other adventurers secured the area and took custody of the cultist, Ace pulled Naruto aside. "This wasn't a random attack," she said softly. "The monsters breaching the wall were a diversion to allow this ritual to proceed unnoticed." "Yeah, I figured that out too," Naruto replied. "But who's behind it? What's their goal?" Ace glanced at the captured cultist being led away. "That's what we've been trying to determine. Similar incidents have been increasing across Ororio, rituals, time distortions, coordinated monster attacks." Her golden eyes studied him carefully. "And now you arrive, with abilities that seem connected to the very forces being manipulated." Naruto met her gaze directly. "You think I'm involved somehow?" "I think," she said deliberately, "that your appearance and these events may be connected, but not in the way you fear. Perhaps you were brought here for a purpose, to help stop whatever is coming." The idea resonated uncomfortably with what Hestia had suggested. Naruto wasn't sure how he felt about being part of some grand destiny in yet another world. He'd had enough of prophecies and chosen ones back in his own reality. "Maybe," he conceded. "Or maybe it's just really bad timing." Ace almost smiled at that. "In my experience, there's rarely such a thing as coincidence when gods are involved." She turned to leave, then paused. "The ability you demonstrated, reversing time, be careful with it. Such power attracts attention from beings you might not want to notice you." With that warning, she departed to rejoin her familia, leaving Naruto with more questions than answers. By morning, the city had begun to recover from the attack. Damage was being repaired, wounded were being treated, and an uneasy calm had settled over Ororio. The Hestia familia had returned to their church headquarters, where Naruto explained everything that had happened with the cultists and the harvester creature. Hestia listened with growing concern, pacing the small room as Naruto described his new ability to reverse an object's timeline. "This confirms my fears," she finally said. The fire blessing I gave you has evolved beyond what I anticipated, merging with your chakra and this Ninetales energy to create something unprecedented. Is that bad? Bell asked. Not bad, Hestia clarified. But dangerous. What Naruto described, the ability to burn through time itself, reverting objects to previous states, that's power that shouldn't be possible for mortals. She sat down beside Naruto, her expression serious. It's power that belongs to primordial beings, like Kronos. The cult leader mentioned that name, Naruto remembered. Said he was the Lord of Time. Hestia nodded grimly. Kronos is a titan, one of the beings that existed before the gods themselves. He ruled time and was brutal in his reign. My father, Zeus, led the rebellion that overthrew him, cutting him into pieces and sealing him away in the depths of Tartarus. Your father? Naruto looked confused. But Zeus was at the gathering last night. Gods have complicated family trees, Hestia said with a wry smile. And even more complicated relationships. The Zeus you met is a reflection of the original Zeus, who still rules in the upper realm. We gods who came to the lower world took diminished forms, though we maintain connections to our true selves. Bell looked fascinated by this explanation. Clearly, Hestia didn't often discuss divine metaphysics with her familia. Anyway, she continued, Kronos was sealed away, but myths say he would one day attempt to return. The seals binding him have held for eons, until recently. And you think these cultists are working to free him? Naruto guessed. It appears so. The coordinated monster attacks, the rituals, the time distortions, all point to someone weakening the barriers between realms. Hestia's expression darkened. And now there's you, Naruto, someone with a natural affinity for both fire and time manipulation, who arrive just as these events accelerate. You're not suggesting I'm causing this? Naruto asked sharply. No, Hestia assured him quickly. But I believe your arrival may be connected. The hearth, my domain, exists outside normal time. It's eternal, the first fire and the last. When my blessing merged with your chakra, it may have created a resonance with temporal energy that Kronos or his servants can sense. Naruto absorbed this information, trying to connect it to what he knew about dimensional travel and the enemy he'd been fighting before arriving in this world. Could that battle have weakened barriers between realities in ways that extended beyond his own world? So what do we do? He finally asked. We investigate, Hestia decided. First, I need to tell you the truth about your blessing, something I didn't fully understand until seeing how it's manifesting. She guided them to the hearth at the center of their living space. With a wave of her hand, the small flame grew larger, shifting colors from orange to a deeper gold. The hearth is more than just fire, she explained. It's the center of home, of civilization itself. In ancient times, my sacred flame burned eternally in every city, tended by priestesses who ensured it never extinguished. This was because the hearth flame exists partly outside time, a constant that remains unchanged while all else transforms around it. The fire danced as she spoke, casting moving shadows across their faces. When I gave you my blessing, Naruto, it connected you to this eternal flame. But your unique energy, your chakra and the Ninetales, transformed the connection into something more. You've become a conduit for the flame's timeless aspect, able to burn through temporal barriers in ways I never anticipated. That's why I could revert that skeleton monster's arm? Naruto asked. Hestia nodded. You didn't just destroy it, you burned away its timeline, returning it to a state before it had fully materialized. That's both awesome and terrifying, Naruto admitted. Indeed. And I fear it makes you both a weapon against Kronos' forces and a target for them. Hestia touched the flame, which curled around her fingers without burning her. The eternal hearth fire exists in opposition to Kronos' domain. He seeks to control and manipulate time, while the hearth exists as a constant, unchanging presence throughout time. Bell, who had been listening intently, finally spoke up. So Naruto is like a fire sage who can burn through time itself. That's amazing. Hestia smiled at his enthusiasm. Yes, though, amazing powers often come with amazing responsibilities, and dangers. Naruto thought about everything he'd learned, connecting it to his experiences since arriving in this world. The strange resonance he'd felt with Hestia from their first meeting, the way his chakra had transformed under her blessing, the new abilities that seemed to expand with each challenge. I need to learn to control this better, he decided. If Kronos or his servants can sense me using these powers, I need to understand exactly what I'm doing. Agreed, Hestia said. Which brings me to what we do next. There's an ancient temple in the forest north of Ororio, dedicated to Hestia and Hephaestus jointly, from before we came to the lower world. It contains writings about the eternal flame that might help you understand your new abilities. Then that's where we'll go, Naruto declared. Bell stood excitedly. A quest for the Hestia Familia. Hestia's expression turned more serious. It won't be that simple. The temple has been abandoned for centuries, who knows what might have taken residence there. And if Kronos' followers are as active as we fear, they may be watching sacred sites connected to gods opposed to the Titans. We'll be careful, Naruto promised. But if understanding this power helps stop whatever's happening, we can't waste time. The irony of his statement wasn't lost on any of them. Preparations for their expedition took the rest of the day. They gathered supplies, consulted maps, and even visited the guild to officially register their quest, though they kept the details vague, listing it simply as exploration of ancient ruins, rather than revealing their true purpose. While at the guild, they encountered an unexpected ally. You're investigating the time distortions, aren't you? Ace Wallenstein approached them as they were preparing to leave, her direct manner catching Bell off guard. What? No, we're just, Bell stammered. Yes, Naruto interrupted, earning a surprised look from Bell. He had decided that Ace could be trusted, at least more than most in this city. We're going to a temple that might have information about what's happening. Ace nodded, unsurprised by his honesty. The Loki Familia has been tracking these incidents for months. After what happened yesterday, Loki agreed we should share information with relevant parties. Her eyes lingered on Naruto. Your abilities make you relevant. Thanks. I think. Naruto replied. I want to come with you, Ace stated simply. Not as a representative of Loki Familia, unofficially. Just me. Bell nearly choked on air. You want to join us? But why? Because whatever's happening affects all of Ororio, and after seeing what Naruto can do against these temporal threats, I believe working together increases our chances of success. She handed Naruto a small, folded map. These are locations where we've documented time distortions over the past 3 months. Your temple is marked, there was an incident there 2 weeks ago. Naruto examined the map, noting the pattern of disturbances forming an irregular spiral centered roughly on Ororio itself. This is really helpful. Thanks. I'll meet you at the north gate at dawn tomorrow, Ace said, turning to leave. Wait, Bell called, finding his voice. Won't Loki be angry if you come with us instead of your own familia? Ace almost smiled. Loki understands strategic alliances. Besides, she glanced at Naruto, I want to see more of what the fire sage can do. After she departed, Bell looked both terrified and ecstatic. The Sword Princess is joining our quest. This is. I don't even know what this is. It's good to have experienced help, Naruto said practically, though he understood Bell's excitement. Ace reminded him of skilled kunoichi like Temari or Konan, composed, powerful, and intimidating in the best possible way. Their final stop before returning home was a weapons shop run by a gruff, muscular goddess named Hephaestus, who greeted Hestia with the familiarity of an old friend. So this is your new child, Hephaestus said, examining Naruto with an expert's eye. Unusual energy. Not sure my standard weapons would channel it properly. That's why we came to you specifically, Hestia explained. Naruto needs something that can work with his unique abilities. Hephaestus circled Naruto, occasionally reaching out to touch his arm or shoulder, as if measuring energy rather than physical dimensions. Fire affinity, but not ordinary fire. And something else, temporal resonance. You can sense that? Naruto asked, impressed. I'm the goddess of forges and crafting, Hephaestus replied matter-of-factly. Understanding the properties of what I'm working with is essential. She disappeared into a back room, returning moments later with a set of unusual gauntlets. These were commissioned years ago by a fire mage with time manipulation abilities. He died before they were completed, and no one else could use them properly. She held them out to Naruto. Try them on. The gauntlets were lightweight despite their substantial appearance, made of a metal Naruto didn't recognize that shifted colors like oil on water. When he slipped them on, they adjusted automatically to fit his hands perfectly. Channel your energy into them, Hephaestus instructed. Just a small amount at first. Naruto focused, directing a careful stream of chakra into the gauntlets. They responded immediately, glowing with a warm light that followed the patterns etched into their surface. The metal warmed but didn't become uncomfortable, seeming to absorb and amplify his energy rather than simply conducting it. Perfect compatibility, Hephaestus said with satisfaction. The metal is a special alloy that exists partially outside normal time, similar to your goddess's eternal flame. It should help you focus and direct your temporal abilities with greater precision. These are amazing, Naruto said, flexing his hands and feeling how responsive the gauntlets were. How much do they cost? Hephaestus waved away the question. Consider them payment for a favor you'll do me later. That temple you're visiting, it contains some of my earliest forged designs. Bring back any sketches or artifacts you find, and we'll call it even. On their way back to the church, Naruto practiced channeling different types of energy into the gauntlets, standard chakra, sage chakra. Carefully, given the different nature energy of this world, and the fire blessing from Hestia. Each produced different effects, from subtle glowing to more dramatic flames that seemed to hang in the air after he moved his hands. You're adapting quickly, Hestia observed as they walked. Most adventurers take months or years to develop new abilities. I've always been a fast learner when it comes to practical techniques, Naruto replied, thinking of how he'd mastered the Rasengan in Sage mode through intensive, hands-on training. And having Kurama helps, he can see patterns in energy flow that I might miss. By evening, they had finished their preparations and spent a quiet meal discussing their plan for the temple expedition. As darkness fell, Hestia performed a blessing ritual for their journey, the hearth fire burning especially bright as she invoked protection for her familia. Later, unable to sleep, Naruto sat outside the church, gazing up at unfamiliar stars. His mind wandered to Konoha, to his friends, to the life he'd left behind. Were they searching for him? Had any time passed there at all? Dimensional travel made such questions impossible to answer. Can't sleep. Bell's voice came from behind him. Naruto shook his head as Bell sat beside him. Just thinking about home. Do you miss it a lot? Yeah. Naruto's voice softened. I had people there who were counting on me. Friends who became family. Bell was quiet for a moment. Do you think you'll find a way back? I hope so. But until then. Naruto looked back at the church where Hestia slept. I found good people here too. Bell smiled. The goddess was alone for a long time, you know. Before I joined her familia. Most gods have dozens or hundreds of followers, but she had none. His ruby eyes reflected the moonlight. Having you join us, seeing how happy it makes her, it means a lot. She's special, Naruto agreed. Reminds me of some of the best people I knew back home. Kind but strong in their own way. They sat in companionable silence for a while, until Bell spoke again. What was it like? When you used that time-burning ability against the harvester? Naruto considered the question. It felt like, seeing all the possible versions of something at once, and being able to choose which one should exist. Like I could see the timeline of that creature's arm, from dust to bone and back again, and I just pushed it backward. Belle looked both fascinated and slightly unnerved. That's incredible. And a little scary. Yeah. Naruto flexed his hand, remembering the sensation. It is. The conversation drifted to lighter topics: Belle's early adventures in Ororio, Naruto's less classified stories from Konoha, their mutual appreciation of good ramen. By the time they returned inside, both felt more at ease about the journey ahead. Dawn came quickly, finding the Hestia Familia prepared and making their way to the north gate where Ace waited, a small pack slung over her shoulder and her sword at her hip. She acknowledged them with a nod. Ready? As will ever be, Naruto replied. Belle seemed torn between nervousness at traveling with his idol and excitement about the adventure ahead. Hestia gave them each a small pendant, simple wooden discs carved with flame symbols. These are connected to my hearth, she explained. If you're in danger, break them, and I'll know instantly. With final goodbyes to their goddess, the unlikely trio set out from Ororio, following the northern road toward the distant forest where the ancient temple waited, and perhaps, answers about the disturbances threatening their world. The journey to the temple took most of the day. They traveled through farmlands that gradually gave way to wilder countryside, finally entering a dense forest as afternoon shadows lengthened. Ace led the way confidently, clearly familiar with the region despite claiming never to have visited the temple itself. Loki Familia patrols these areas regularly, she explained when Naruto asked. Monster outbreaks from the forest have increased lately. As if summoned by her words, they soon encountered their first challenge, a pack of wolf-like creatures with unnaturally glowing eyes that emerged from the underbrush, surrounding them in a coordinated attack pattern. Corrupted timber wolves, Ace identified, drawing her sword. They shouldn't be pack hunters. Belle readied his knife. Another sign of something wrong. Definitely, she confirmed. The wolves attacked with unsettling synchronization, moving like a single organism rather than individual creatures. Naruto created shadow clones to break their formation while Belle and Ace engaged directly, their fighting styles complementing each other surprisingly well. Naruto noticed Ace watching him as they fought, studying his techniques with professional interest. When one wolf lunged at her blind spot, he instinctively threw a kunai enhanced with wind chakra, taking down the creature before she needed to react. She acknowledged the assist with a nod before finishing the last wolf with a precise sword thrust. Your awareness in battle is exceptional. Thanks. Yours too, Naruto replied, dispelling his remaining clones. Belle collected the magic stones from the defeated monsters, looking troubled. Did you notice their eyes? That green glow, it's the same color as the energy from that ritual yesterday. Corruption, Ace confirmed. We've been seeing it spread through monster populations. They become more aggressive, more intelligent, and develop unnatural abilities. They continued more cautiously after that, encountering several more corrupted monster groups as they ventured deeper into the forest. Each fight revealed the same pattern: unnatural coordination, green glowing eyes, and unusual abilities not typical for the monster types. Late afternoon brought them to the edge of a clearing where ancient stone pillars emerged from overgrown vegetation. At its center stood a temple, smaller than Naruto had expected but undeniably impressive in its construction. Weathered but intact, the building featured intricate carvings of flames and forges around its entrance. The Temple of Eternal Forge, Ace said quietly. Built when the worship of Hestia and Hephaestus was often combined. They approached cautiously, all three sensing the unnatural stillness surrounding the temple. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, just oppressive silence broken only by their footsteps. Something's wrong, Belle whispered. It's too quiet. Naruto nodded, activating his sensory abilities to scan the area. There's energy here, similar to what we felt during the ritual, but older, more settled. The time distortion Loki Familia detected, Ace suggested. It could have altered the area. The temple entrance was partially blocked by fallen stones, requiring them to climb over debris to enter. Inside, shafts of late-afternoon sunlight filtered through cracks in the ceiling, illuminating a space that might once have been magnificent but now lay in ruins. At the center, however, something unexpected waited, an intact forge and hearth, looking as if they had been used recently. "That's not right," Ace said, tensing. "This temple has been abandoned for centuries." Naruto approached the hearth carefully. Unlike the rest of the temple, the stone hearth showed no signs of age or deterioration. The ashes within looked fresh, and beside it, tools lay arranged as if waiting for their owner's return. "Time distortion," he murmured, understanding immediately. "This space is experiencing time differently than the rest of the temple." As he reached toward the hearth, his gauntlets began to glow responsively, the metal warming against his skin. The moment his fingertips touched the stone edge, visions flooded his mind, flashes of priestesses tending the flame, of craftsmen working the forge, of rituals performed around the sacred fire. But interspersed with these historical images were darker scenes, cultists surrounding the hearth, performing corrupted rituals, opening tears in reality similar to what he'd witnessed in Ororio. Naruto pulled back with a gasp, the visions fading. "They've been using this place. The cultists. Trying to corrupt the connection to Hestia's eternal flame." "Why?" Bell asked, examining ancient scrolls laid out on a nearby table. "The eternal flame exists outside normal time," Ace said, surprising both of them with her knowledge. "If they're trying to free Chronos, controlling or corrupting places with temporal significance would be strategically important." Naruto nodded. "That makes sense. But something stopped them, the hearth rejected their attempts." He touched the stone again, more prepared for the visions this time. "I can feel it, the hearth recognized them as enemies and prevented the corruption from taking hold." Bell had unrolled one of the scrolls, struggling to decipher the ancient writing. "I think this might be important. It shows drawings of the hearth and symbols that look like Naruto's blessing mark." They gathered around the scroll, which contained diagrams of flame patterns alongside text in an archaic language. Ace traced the symbols with a finger. "This is old divine script. I recognize portions from Loki Familia records." She pointed to specific characters. "These reference the guardian of the eternal flame and one who walks between moments." "The fire sage," Naruto said, remembering Hestia's words. Bell turned to another scroll. "This one has illustrations of gauntlets similar to yours, Naruto. And here," he pointed excitedly, "a technique for focusing the flame's power against temporal disruptions." As they studied the ancient documents, Naruto felt a growing connection to the hearth, as if its power recognized him. His gauntlets continued to glow softly, occasionally sparking with small flames that didn't burn the parchment when he touched the scrolls. "These instructions," he said, examining the diagrams more closely. "They show how to use the eternal flame to seal tears in time, exactly what the cultists have been creating." "Can you understand the technique?" Ace asked. Naruto nodded slowly. "I think so. It's similar to sealing jutsu from my world, but using the fire blessing instead of standard chakra." He studied the hand positions shown in the diagrams. "I need to practice this before." A sudden tremor cut him off, the temple floor shaking beneath them. Dust and small stones rained from the ceiling as the quake intensified. "Something's coming," Ace warned, hand moving to her sword. The tremors focused around the hearth, which began glowing with increasingly bright light, not the warm gold of Hestia's flame, but the sickly green they'd come to associate with the cult's activities. The air above the hearth shimmered, reality itself seeming to thin. "They're using our presence to trigger something," Naruto realized. "The hearth is responding to me, to Hestia's blessing, and they're exploiting that connection." The tear widened rapidly, green energy spilling into the temple. Through the growing rift, a figure became visible, humanoid but wrong, its proportions distorted and its form shifting constantly, as if unable to settle on a single point in time. "Servants of the hearth," the figure spoke, its voice echoing from multiple moments simultaneously. How convenient that you've come, bearing the very key we seek. Key? Bell questioned, moving into a defensive position. The entity's gaze, if the shifting collection of light points on its face could be called such, fixed on Naruto. The Fire Sage. The one who burns through time. His power is the key to breaking the final seals binding our master. Ai's sword gleamed as she stepped forward. You serve Chronos. I am Aeon, keeper of fractured moments, loyal servant to the Lord of Time. The entity solidified slightly, revealing armor made of what appeared to be frozen moments in time, battles, births, deaths, all captured and preserved in its protective covering. And you have saved us considerable effort by bringing the sage directly to this nexus point. Naruto raised his gauntlet hands defensively. Whatever you're planning, it won't work. I'm not helping free your master. Your cooperation is unnecessary, Aeon replied coldly. Only your essence is required. With frightening speed, Aeon thrust an arm through the rift, extending it impossibly across the room toward Naruto. Bell and Ai's moved to intercept, but the limb split into multiple trajectories, engaging them while continuing toward its primary target. Naruto dodged, his enhanced reflexes barely sufficient against the time-warping attack. Where Aeon's hand passed, reality itself distorted, objects aging to dust or reverting to raw materials in its wake. I can't land a solid hit. Ai's called, her sword passing through portions of Aeon as if he existed partially in another dimension. He's phase-shifting. Bell discovered the same problem, his knife finding purchase one moment, then passing through empty air the next. How do we fight something that isn't fully here? Naruto remembered the temple scrolls, the techniques they'd just been studying. If Aeon existed across multiple time points, perhaps the fire blessing could force him to consolidate into a single moment. Channeling chakra into his gauntlets, Naruto focused on the sensation he'd experienced when reverting the harvester's arm. The metal grew hot, flames appearing around his hands that left trailing afterimages as he moved. Following the diagrams from the scrolls, he formed a specific sequence of hand positions. Hearth style, temporal anchor, he called, instinctively naming the technique as he would a jutsu. Flames shot from his gauntlets, not attacking Aeon directly but surrounding him, creating a burning circle that contracted slowly. Where the flames touched the entity's time-distorted form, they seemed to burn away the temporal shifting, forcing affected areas into a single, consistent state. What is this? Aeon hissed, genuine concern in its multi-layered voice. The eternal flame should not have such focus. Guess you didn't account for a shinobi from another dimension, Naruto replied, maintaining the technique while creating shadow clones to assist Bell and Ai's. We tend to be unpredictable. As more of Aeon's form was anchored to the present moment, Ai's and Bell found their attacks connecting more consistently. The entity roared in frustration, abandoning its attempt to capture Naruto and focusing instead on breaking free from the temporal anchoring. You cannot stop what has been set in motion, Fire Sage. Aeon declared. The seals are already weakening. Soon our Lord will rise again, and all timelines will be his to command. Not if we have anything to say about it, Naruto countered, completing the anchoring circle. With Aeon now fully manifested in the present, Ai's struck with devastating precision, her sword cleaving through armor that, while still formidable, no longer shifted between moments. Bell followed with his own attack, his knife glowing with energy as he activated one of his own abilities. Firebolt, he shouted, electricity crackling along his blade as he drove it into a gap in Aeon's defenses. The combined assault staggered the entity, forcing it back toward the rift. Naruto recognized their opportunity. With Aeon weakened, they could seal the temporal tear using the temple's techniques. Keep him busy, he called to his companions, rushing to the hearth itself. Placing his gauntlet hands directly into the corrupted flame, Naruto focused on purifying it, drawing on Hestia's blessing and his own connection to the hearth. Pain shot through his arms as the corruption fought back, but gradually, the sickly green glow receded, replaced by the natural golden warmth of the eternal flame. With the hearth reclaimed, Naruto drew power from it into his gauntlets, which now blazed with golden fire. Following the ancient diagrams, he directed this energy toward the rift, forming seals in the air that burned with intensity. Hearth style, eternal seal, he proclaimed. The flaming seals expanded, surrounding the tear in reality. Where they touched the edges of the rift, the corruption burned away, the natural order of time reasserting itself. Aeon, seeing his escape route closing, abandoned the fight with Bell and Ace, diving toward the shrinking portal. "This means nothing," the entity snarled as it retreated. "You've only delayed the inevitable. The Lord of Time sees you now, Fire Sage, across all possible timelines, he knows your weakness." With those ominous words, Aeon vanished through the rift moments before Naruto's seals closed it completely. The temple fell silent again, though this time the atmosphere felt cleansed, the oppressive wrongness replaced by a gentle warmth emanating from the purified hearth. Naruto lowered his hands, the flames around his gauntlet subsiding to a soft glow. "Is everyone okay?" Bell nodded, though he looked exhausted. "That was intense." Ace sheathed her sword, her expression thoughtful. "You fought well, both of you. But I'm concerned about what Aeon said regarding seals weakening." "Yeah." Naruto approached the now golden hearth, feeling its welcoming warmth. "He talked about me being a key somehow. And about Chronos seeing me across timelines." "Whatever they're planning," Bell said, gathering the scrolls they'd been studying, "at least we now have information that might help stop them." Naruto agreed, though uneasiness lingered. Aeon had been confident, too confident for someone who had just been defeated. It suggested their victory here was minor in the greater scheme of whatever Chronos' servants were orchestrating. As if sensing his thoughts, Ace placed a hand on his shoulder. "This was just one battle. The war continues. We should get these back to Hestia," Bell suggested, carefully storing the scrolls. "She'll know what to make of them." Naruto took one last look around the temple, his gaze returning to the hearth. "We should restore this place properly before we leave. If it's a nexus point as Aeon claimed, we don't want to leave it vulnerable." Using the techniques they discovered, Naruto worked with Bell and Ace to reinforce the temple's natural protections. They cleared debris, repaired what they could of the structure, and Naruto used his gauntlets to place protective seals at key points around the building. By the time they finished, the temple looked less abandoned and more like a sacred site being tended again, which, in a sense, it now was. "The eternal flame burns cleanly again," Ace observed as they prepared to depart. "It should help stabilize the time distortions in this area." "One down," Naruto said, thinking of the map with its many marked disturbance locations. "Several more to go." As they left the temple clearing, heading back toward Ororio with their newfound knowledge, none of them noticed the small green crystal embedded in a tree at the forest's edge, a watching device through which distant eyes had observed everything that had transpired. In a chamber deep beneath Ororio, those eyes now turned away from the scrying crystal, a smile forming on ancient lips. "The fire sage grows stronger," a voice murmured to assembled cultists. "His connection to the eternal flame deepens with each challenge." The figure rose from an ornate throne, green energy swirling around gaunt limbs. "Prepare the final ritual. When he returns to Ororio, all will be ready for the grand awakening." Cultists bowed in unison. "For Chronos, Lord of Time." "For Chronos," their leader echoed, eyes fixed on an enormous mural depicting a being of terrible power breaking free from chains made of golden flame. "The hour approaches when all timelines will be his to command once more." The return journey to Ororio proved surprisingly uneventful, as if the forest itself had been cleansed by their actions at the temple. They traveled through the night, reaching the city gates as dawn broke. Guards waved them through with minimal questioning, the combination of Bell's guild card, Ace's reputation, and Naruto's now recognizable appearance sufficient to grant easy passage. "I should report to Loki," Ace said as they entered the city proper. "She'll want to know what we found." Bell nodded. "We'll take the scrolls to Goddess Hestia." Maybe we can all meet later to discuss what we've learned. The hostess of fertility at sunset, Ace suggested. Loki will want to come too. Fine by me, Naruto agreed, though he wondered how Hestia would feel about sharing information with her rival goddess. They parted ways, Bell and Naruto heading toward their church headquarters while Ace turned toward Twilight Manor. The city was just awakening, merchants setting up stalls and early-rising adventurers preparing for dungeon expeditions. We did it, Bell said, his voice combining exhaustion and excitement. We actually fought a servant of Kronos and won. This time, Naruto cautioned. But it sounds like they've been planning this for a while. One victory doesn't end their scheme. Bell's enthusiasm didn't diminish. Still. The Hestia Familia working with the Sword Princess, discovering ancient temple secrets, fighting time monsters, it's like something from the hero stories I grew up reading. Naruto couldn't help smiling at Bell's perspective. Despite everything he'd seen and experienced in his young life as an adventurer, Bell maintained a wonderful capacity for wonder and excitement. It reminded Naruto of his own younger self, before the Fourth Shinobi War had tempered his outlook. They arrived at the church to find Hestia pacing anxiously, her face lighting up with relief when she spotted them. "You're back," she exclaimed, rushing to embrace them both. "I felt the activation of the temple's hearth and knew you must have succeeded, but I was still worried." Bell proudly presented the scrolls they'd recovered. "We found information about Naruto's abilities, goddess. And we fought a servant of Kronos named Aeon." Hestia's expression shifted to concern. "Aeon appeared? That's troubling. He's one of Kronos' most loyal lieutenants, tasked with preparing the way for his master's return. He called me a key," Naruto said as they settled inside. "Said I was needed for breaking the final seals binding Kronos." Hestia examined the scrolls as they explained everything that had happened at the temple. Her brow furrowed increasingly as she translated the ancient divine script. "These confirm what I feared," she finally said. "The eternal flame, my domain, is one of the primary forces keeping Kronos sealed away. Zeus may have led the rebellion, but it was the hearth fire that forged the chains binding the Titan Lord. And my connection to your blessing makes me important somehow." Naruto guessed. Hestia nodded grimly. "According to these texts, only one with dominion over both fire and time could break the seals, or strengthen them. The ancient priests who created these bindings ensured they could only be affected by someone with authority in both domains. Like a fire sage who burns time," Bell said, quoting their earlier description of Naruto. "Precisely." Hestia unrolled another scroll, revealing diagrams of 9 interconnected seals arranged around a central flame. This depicts the binding system, 9 seals placed at specific locations throughout the world, all connected to the eternal hearth at their center. Naruto studied the diagram, recognition dawning. "The distortions on A's map, they correspond to these seal locations, don't they?" "Almost certainly," Hestia agreed. "Kronos' servants have been systematically weakening each seal, creating temporal disruptions in the process." "But why do they need me specifically?" Naruto pressed. "If they're already breaking the seals, they can weaken them, but not destroy them completely." Hestia pointed to symbols on the scroll. "The final breaking requires someone who can channel the eternal flame itself, someone like you, who carries my blessing but can manipulate time in ways even gods cannot." Bell looked between them anxiously. "So they want to capture Naruto and force him to break the seals? Or extract whatever essence of his power allows him to manipulate time," Hestia said grimly. "Aeon's comment about not needing his cooperation suggests they have some method of using his abilities without his consent." The implications settled heavily over them. Naruto had become a target not despite his unique powers, but because of them, powers he was only beginning to understand and control. "We're meeting Ace and Loki at the hostess of fertility tonight," Bell mentioned. "To share information." Hestia's expression soured slightly at Loki's name, but she nodded. "Good. We'll need allies for what's coming. I should contact other gods as well," those who might remember the original binding of Kronos. Like Zeus. Naruto suggested, remembering the powerful god's interest in his abilities. Perhaps, Hestia said, though she didn't sound enthusiastic. Zeus keeps his own counsel these days. But Hephaestus will help, and possibly Athena, if she can be reached. They spent the remainder of the day studying the scrolls and preparing for the evening's meeting. Naruto practiced with his gauntlets, working to refine the techniques he'd used against Aeon. The more he worked with Hestia's fire blessing, the more natural it felt, as if his chakra had been waiting for this complementary energy all along. Inside his mind, Kurama observed these developments with interest. Your connection to this goddess's power grows stronger, the fox noted. It reminds me of the Sage of Six Paths, a mortal channeling divine energy. Is that dangerous? Naruto asked silently. Not inherently. But power always attracts those who would use it for their own ends, as we're already seeing with these Kronos followers. Naruto considered this as he formed flames between his gauntlet hands, practicing shaping them into the ceiling patterns from the temple scrolls. I just wanted to find a way home. Now I'm caught in another world's ancient divine conflict. Kurama snorted. When have you ever had a simple journey, brat? At least this time you're not starting as the village outcast. That was true, Naruto had to admit. Despite the dangers, his reception in this world had been largely positive. He had friends, a goddess who valued him, and growing respect among the adventurer community. It was a far cry from his early days in Konoha. By evening, they were ready for the meeting, arriving at the hostess of fertility to find Ace already waiting with Loki and several senior members of her familia. The famous fire sage arrives. Loki greeted dramatically. Along with little Argonaut and itty-bitty goddess. Hestia's eye twitched at the nickname. Loki. I see you're as obnoxious as ever. And you're as flat as ever, Loki replied with a grin, making a measuring gesture with her hands. Before the divine squabbling could escalate, Reveria, the elegant elf executive from Loki Familia, intervened smoothly. Perhaps we should focus on the matter at hand. Ace has shared what occurred at the temple. They were led to a private room at the back of the tavern, where maps and documents already covered a large table. Mia, the cat-eared proprietress, brought food and drinks before sealing the door behind her. She's trustworthy, Loki explained, seeing Naruto's questioning look. Former high-level adventurer herself, knows when to be discreet. Once settled, Ace recounted their temple encounter, with Bell and Naruto adding details about the techniques they discovered and the confrontation with Aeon. Loki's familia listened with growing concern, particularly when Naruto demonstrated a small example of his time-burning ability, creating flame afterimages that lingered several seconds after he moved his hand. This matches what we've observed at other distortion sites, Reveria confirmed, indicating locations on their map. Each shows signs of temporal manipulation centered around ancient sacred places. The 9 seals binding Kronos, Hestia explained, unrolling one of the temple scrolls. Placed by the original gods before most of us came to the lower world. Loki examined the scroll with uncharacteristic seriousness. I remember tales of this binding. Zeus led the effort, but several elder gods contributed their power, you among them, Hestia, through the eternal flame. The hearth fire exists outside normal time, Hestia confirmed. Making it ideal for binding one who seeks to control time itself. Bet, the werewolf warrior, leaned forward. So these cultists are trying to break the seals to free their master. How close are they to succeeding? Too close, Reveria answered before Hestia could. Based on our observations, 7 of the 9 seals have already been weakened significantly. Only 2 remain relatively intact. The temple we visited and one other. Naruto guessed. Loki nodded, pointing to a location on the map, distressingly close to Ororio itself. The Kronos shrine, built directly over the spot where Zeus supposedly cast the final binding spell on Kronos. And they need me to break the final seals completely, Naruto said grimly. Which means they'll be coming for you, Loki concluded. probably sooner rather than later, given your little victory at the temple. Bell looked worried. What do we do? We can't just wait for them to attack. We don't, Ace stated firmly. We take the fight to them. Loki grinned at her usually reserved champion. Oh ho. Ace wants to go on the offensive. I approve. The Chronos Shrine is where they'll perform their final ritual, Hestia reasoned. If we can secure it, reinforce its seal as Naruto did at the temple. We force them to change their plans, Reveria finished. Buy ourselves time to prepare better defenses. The discussion turned to strategy, how to approach the shrine, what forces to bring, what defenses to expect. Throughout the planning, Naruto remained partially distracted, something about the situation nagging at him. You said 7 seals are weakened, he finally interrupted. And we reinforced one yesterday. So there's still one more vulnerable seal besides the Chronos Shrine, right? The table fell silent as everyone considered this point. You're right, Reveria said slowly. Based on our intelligence, there should be one more weakened seal location. Loki shuffled through their documents, frowning. It should be here somewhere. Hestia's eyes suddenly widened. The hearth. The central binding point isn't a separate location, it's the hearth of the city itself. Babel, Ace whispered, understanding immediately. What about it? Bell asked, confused. Babel Tower wasn't just built to contain the dungeon, Hestia explained urgently. It was constructed around the original eternal flame of the mortal world, the first hearth I ever blessed. It's the central anchor point for all 9 seals. Loki's expression turned grave. If they control the central hearth, they don't need to break every individual seal. They just need to corrupt the source. And with the Fire Sage's power. Reveria didn't need to finish the thought. Naruto stood abruptly. This meeting could be a distraction, drawing us away from the city center while they make their move on Babel. No sooner had he spoken than a tremendous explosion shook the tavern, rattling dishes and sending dust floating down from the ceiling. They rushed outside to find Babel Tower illuminated by unnatural green light, a massive column of energy shooting upward from its peak into storm clouds that had appeared from nowhere. Throughout Orario, alarm bells began ringing as people poured into streets, pointing and shouting at the phenomenon. Even from a distance, they could see figures moving on the tower's upper levels, performing some kind of ritual around the central spire. It's already started, Hestia said, her voice tight with worry. They're attempting to corrupt the central hearth. Loki turned to her familia. Mobilize everyone. Full combat readiness. To the others, she added, this is it, folks. The final confrontation we've been preparing for. As adventurers from various familias began responding to the emergency, converging on Babel Tower with weapons ready, Naruto exchanged looks with Bell and Hestia. The quiet expedition to an abandoned temple had escalated into what promised to be a battle for the fate of this entire world. And somehow, he stood at the center of it all, the fire sage who burned time, now caught between those who would use his power to unleash chaos and those who needed him to prevent it. Let's go, he said simply, gauntlets already beginning to glow with golden flame. We have a world to save. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.